From the EPAWA headquarters in South Allentown, Pennsylvania, it's time for Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The following segment is a weekly video blog, and the opinions of the forecaster do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the staff of Eastern PA Weather Authority LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Hey, good Sunday morning to you. Another edition for Weather Weeklies for Sunday, March 6th, and this will be our final broadcast until we get into the middle of the fall of 2016, just because we're getting out of the snow season. A lot of people have asked us why we don't continue this year round. They really like it and enjoy it and learn from it, and while I appreciate that, we have a very limited viewership, so it doesn't really make it worth for me to take time away from my family on the weekend to do to research. This isn't just throwing slides up here. This is doing some research, kind of rehearsing what I want to talk about, and then going through a video. So it takes some time, and if there's just not the viewership there, nobody really cares about rain or warmth or anything like that. They will care about the winter weather. That's really what most people care about. So it's really not worth my time and energy to take that time away from my family on the weekends to do it. And I like to do a lot of outdoor stuff here. I'm really not a winter guy, even though it seems like we're forecasting snow, but everybody thinks we're snow lovers. I, for one, really cannot stand the snow. Okay, I had a big episode here with the coronary artery blockage back in October. So snow removal is not my thing. The cold's not my thing. And if I could move to Florida, I probably would, but I can't do that because my business is here, of course. But we have take a look at the long-range forecast table here. So with that being said, so this is going to be the last video we're doing until the middle of the fall, until we can see start looking at some trends that we're looking at for the following winter, and that should be a La Nina year. Wouldn't get too excited about a long La Nina year. A lot of people have asked us about that too, thinking we're going to have this incredible amount of cold and snow. Usually a La Nina year does not give that. Now, there's no two La Ninas alike, just like we saw this year. There's no two El Ninos alike. So it doesn't mean you can't get snow, but it usually favors warm and dry, or mild and dry, I should say, for winter, typically. But there are some pretty robust forecasts out there I've already seen for some unbelievable. We're not even done with this winter yet. Well, we are for all intents and purposes, but on the calendar says we're not done with winter this year. I have people projecting for next year already. Let's just relax a little bit. We'll have our spring outlook that's going to be out to the public around the 15th of March. We'll just that's of course not going to be a video. That's going to be our regular spring outlook. Here's our long-range forecast table. What we're looking at going forward. We do have one storm signal listed here, but this is a rainstorm. So again, I don't see any wintry threats in the foreseeable future at all. No chance that we just start tanking. We could get cooler. I mean, but it's going to be cooler relative to the time. You keep going later and later here, and it's already, today's March 6th, so you can still get snowstorms in March. We've had them. But when you look at the temperatures for the next couple of weeks, 6th to the 19th, above average temperatures. We're going to be well above average this week. Really, really warm. Okay. And then we're going to be hanging above average even after that point. The 20th, 27th, we go back to near average. But the 20th, 27th, near average is in the 50s. Okay, so we're around 50 anyway. So you got temperatures at or above 50 degrees as near average. That's not cold enough for snow. Okay, so March total snowfall is going to be below normal, but we have for most listed here. That's just because that storm the other day, Southern New Jersey did well, and they actually got more than a month's worth of normal snow in March. So they are above normal for the month of March. Everywhere else is going to end up below because we're not expecting any more snowfall, hence the lack of videos. If we have something come up, I do promise that I will do a video, but I don't see anything happening. Now here the March temperature is going to finish above average, perhaps well above average. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And April temperature we have below average. Now we're getting criticism about this too. Well, you guys always put below average, and we'll go over the the past winter. 2015-2016 winter, and show you what exactly went wrong and why we kept putting below average. We had to wait for some things to actually play out to see whether our theories were going to work out, and they just weren't doing it. So, but there are some analogs we're using right now that go into the spring. We'll actually outline those in the spring outlook in a few days. But it does show in those analogs a cold April, a cooler but not cold May, and then we get a hot summer. That's what we're looking at right now. But we'll get into that in a couple days when we get to the spring outlook. Here's the Madden-Julian oscillation. We were talking about this, how this drives our pattern here. This really, this isn't a dayline forcings here. So again, when you're talking about theory, here's North America right here, something like this, Florida. There's North America. Here's your dateline forcing. So when you're looking at this, you're like, okay, well, you should have an amplification like this and have a trough in the east and cold air. Well, we have some cool air right now, and we are in phase 8, so we are getting a little bit of a cool shot up through yesterday. But now we're going to be going into circle of death, and we're going to go into quickly rotate through these warm phases here, and we'll end up here in phase 4. These are warm, really warm phases here. So that's why we're expecting, once you get well into March here, you're going to have some pretty warm days here coming up. So we're going into a favorable pattern for warmth, as well. This is showing here. We get into this week, and we have a huge ridge. It's going to be setting up over the eastern United States. We're going to put a little high pressure out here that's actually going to act as a kind of like a heat pump high, clockwise flow around high pressure, bringing in that warmth, and it's going to be exceptional warmth for this time of year. We're not expecting temperatures to, here's look at that high pressure. We're not expecting temperatures to go so much up and down until you get to the later part of the week. We might have a backdoor cold front come in from New England, where you go from that would come in on Friday, which would knock temperatures back down for the weekend. Unfortunately, I wish this could hold on to the weekend next weekend, but it looks like it's going to be the middle of this week. And we're talking about by the time we get to Wednesday, these are the kind of temperatures you can see well into the 60s and 70s for highs, and this would be on Wednesday. Of course, we're going to be close to that, well into the 60s to near 70 on Tuesday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think is still another warm day, but we have that system that's going to, the backdoor cold front's going to be pushing in from New England. It's going to bring in some colder temperatures, it looks like, for Friday. So the fun's going to end. But right after that backdoor cold front comes in, we start to moderate. We still stay well above normal, or we still stay above normal. I said above normal temperatures after that. So it's gonna be a short blast of cold air, it looks like, and for the most part, we're staying above normal. Nothing drastic, but we're staying above normal nonetheless. Now I want to get into the winter here. All right, we went into our analogs before the season. We've said many times, number one analog was 1957, 1958 was a snowy year, and this is what the sea surface temperature anomalies look like in February 1958. You can see it was a west central based El Nino. It was a moderate El Nino. It was not very strong or super strong like it was this year. You had a warm PDO. You had the cold pool out here. You had the warmth along the East Coast. So everything looked like it was pretty much lining up to what we had this year. Okay, so when we looked at this winter, said, okay, well, we're going to have a centralized Nino, warm PDO, warm water up here, cold south of Greenland, cold pool out here. This is pretty much what we had here and what we were looking at here. So for this year, so as we're going through the fall, so everything was lining up. Okay, and we're saying, well, as long as it's not east-based, which means your best warming would be out here in the near Peru. As long as it wasn't east-based, like it was in 97, 98, and we knew we weren't going to have a 97, 98 year with nothing. Okay, as long as it's not 97, 98, you're going to have where we have a lot of warmth coming into the eastern United States because it's east-based, and we keep it either centralized or west centralized base, which is actually what it ended up this year, west centralized. That would promote a ridge out here and a trough in the eastern United States, and we could also be setting up some blocking. That's what we are looking at here. We're looking at El Nino becoming focused in the west and central basins, okay? And we're looking at this configuration setting up a negative NAO, which is your blocking over Greenland. Now, although we did see it a few times, we did see blocking a few times, it was not as dominant a feature as we thought it was going to be. But that wasn't really the problem, okay? We get into the winter of 2000. Actually, this is winter of 97. This is wrong here. 1957, 1958. This is what we looked like in December. Very warm, just like we were this year. It was a very warm December. We had a flip to colder in January, but not extremely cold, and that's what happened in January. But then you looked at February, and this is 1958, and it was very, very cold. We didn't have this year. We did not have this. There's a reason for that. And when we look to our super El Nino effect here, This was what it looked like in the middle of January. Okay, so although we did end up with a west central based Nino, the eastern basins hung on for a very long time before they gave up their grip here. And we looked at 1957, 1958. This actually shifted to a west central based a little bit quicker. So the fact that it was still holding on to warmth in these eastern basins, even though it wasn't as warm as here, it was still pretty warm here. All right, so the amount of the water temperatures, the temperature differences out here were incredible. I mean, we were definitely above plus 2.5 out here. Okay, and even though it was the warmest region and warmer than these areas, these were still plus 2. Okay, this one here might have been like 1.9. Okay, so it's still warm. It's not like it was cold. All right, and then so it took a while until these areas decreased rapidly and rapidly enough to allow the west central to take over. So it already skewed it a little bit. Even though this is a Super Nino, we never really had a true analog, and we used 2015, 2016. Or excuse me, 1957, 1958, and we used this as the closest analog, and everything looked the same for 57, 58 in the sea surface temperature, which of course, drives our climate. There had to be something else another reason why this was not coming to fruition, and we didn't have this, and a big flip in the second half of winter. Now, we did that one big blizzard here, one big storm here at the end of January, but after that, we expected February to be lining up with the storms, and it just didn't do it. Just didn't do it. And it's in large part to two things. Really, the El Nino. El Nino is a Super Nino. We don't have it. We didn't have a true analog to compare this to, because it wasn't a Super Nino in 57, 58. It was in 97, 98, but it was all east-based, so we threw that out, okay, because it wasn't that. We saw what a Super Nino does with take away that one storm, and we really didn't have much of a winter left, but you really can't take it off the board. It was a huge storm, and it was so huge because of the Super Nino effect. So, with this being said, you had a very fast Pacific flow here. Very fast flow. Everything was very fast. Southern Jet was very fast this year, and that's because of the El Nino and how strong of an El Nino was. So every time you had you need the polar vortex to cooperate, okay? And what we had this winter is normally when you have the polar vortex in the spring, summer months, you have the polar vortex situated over the North Pole, right around north of the Arctic Circle, okay? Occasionally, if you get a big ridge out west, you get these shots of cold air, polar vortex drop south. We did see this drop south a few times. We had one very, very cold weekend in February where this dropped down, but what ends up happening is that, because of the El Nino, the very fast southern jet, very fast, it actually forces the cold air to escape and get out of here pretty quick. So it goes and retreats back up to the Arctic Circle again. All right. So we had this happen. We had these shots come in here like this, but it didn't have any staying power. It was very transient. So we had the stratosphere. We're looking for the stratosphere help. Wasn't much help. We would have you had the stratospheric warming working against the pole. You try to displace the cold air from the poles, and it did. It would displace, okay, and it happened displaced a couple times. We had a couple stratospheric warming events that displaced the polar vortex. But when it displaced south and it came over to eastern United States, it did displace, and that's what we had here. The polar vortex cold came into the eastern United States. As soon as it displaced, it could only stay there for a couple days, and it was kicked out right away. It was kicked out just because El Nino was just so strong. So this is a lesson learned for us. Don't rely so much on the, like I said, if we were doing this back all over again, we did this back in November. But if I was going back and doing this again, just looking at what I'm looking at right now, what I had available to me at that time, I wouldn't have done it any differently. But we didn't have any true analog. We didn't have anything to look at to say, well, this happened exactly like this or this year, so we can expect something very similar. We tried to do that with 57, 58, but apparently the Super Nino effect really was so overwhelming of the pattern to the point where it affected the polar vortex and kept it up over the Arctic Circle for most of the winter. And if you had any meteorologist will tell you, if you don't have a negative Arctic oscillation, which allows that, that's what this is. The Arctic oscillation is this here when you're seeing that polar vortex coming down. Any meteorologist will tell you, if you don't have the negative Arctic oscillation, you're screwed. You're not getting any. You're not getting the cold and snow, and with that very fast flow, it's locked up with the polar vortex are locked up over the North Pole, or at least north of the Arctic Circle, and that's what dominated the pattern this year. So although the stratosphere helped a little bit to get some of those transient shots in here, it wasn't, the El Nino prevented it from having staying power, and we had nothing more than a transitional cold shots here and there. So our winter outlook projection looked like this. It was very aggressive, and the only areas we verified were right down here. That's it. Our southeast areas were verified, and yes, that was helped a little bit by a late season push here in March. Our central areas, which are right in here, these are the areas that got hit hard by that blizzard, right in here, okay? These areas came close, but not quite close enough. Philadelphia here had is at 27.1, I believe, and we projected about 30 inches here as a minimum base here. So we were a little bit low here, not by much, and we're off, but you know, I know we had Allentown between 49 and 57 inches, and I think Allentown somewhere around 36. So it's above normal for this area, but not above normal to the point where, you know, we projected it. So again, this is the one hit wonder belt right in here, where it had that one big storm. Areas that missed out on that storm to our northwest here really missed out here, and we had above normal between anywhere from 125 to 150 out in this area. This was 150 to 175% of normal snowfall. Places up here barely got over 10 inches. Some places didn't, out here by Williamsport. So very, again, this is underestimating the power of the El Nino, and that's how that worked out. So we did verify down here, kind of lucked out with that big blizzard here in the middle, and very, very far off here in the northeastern PA. Again, doing this back in November, I wouldn't have done anything any differently if I was looking at that same data now. But it's a lesson learned now. We have another analog to look at. If this ever happens in the future, now we can say, hey, look, remember back in 2015, 2016, we had the same kind of setup. So now we can, now we have something, another analog to look at in the future that'll help us learn going forward, and hopefully we have something a lot easier to look at next year. You know, with a La Nina coming in. Again, this is our last video that we're doing for this winter season, unless something comes up here, which I don't expect. But if you want to come back here to look for this this in the fall, we will have that we will have that started up again for next winter with the weekly videos, weather weeklies at that time. I'm Eastern PA Weather Authority meteorologist Bobby Martrich. That is this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, March 6th, 2016. Have a great Sunday.